Hey everyone. In this video, I'm going to go over some good tips within the Unity editor itself. This is mostly going to cover just stuff you can do inside the editor. I'm not going to cover any scripting things in here. I'm going to do some scripting tips and tricks in the future. But this is going to be pretty short. Just going to show you a couple cool things that you can do in the Unity editor that not a lot of people use, in my experience. They kind of gloss over, and they can be really, really useful. But you just got to take advantage of them. So, probably like the most important shortcut, and I think I even talked about it in my first video covering the editor, is the F key. So I'm just flying around my interface here, and I've got my camera asset. And if at any point in time I want to focus on whatever I have selected inside my scene hierarchy, I can just press the F key and it will frame it more or less kind of in the middle. If you want to see this better, let me just make a cube, and you can see I can go right to it. Super useful. Like, this is probably the shortcut I use the most, other than maybe Control S for save. Hugely, hugely important, especially when you're constructing stuff inside the editor. So, the F key. Use it, abuse it. Definitely don't forget about it. So another helpful thing in navigating and setting up your scene are some of the things you can do sorta to the Gizmo. So the Gizmo is this dude here that I'm manipulating to move, rotate, etc. Really, and then a lot of Gizmos have these icons, like the camera has this camera icon. So in your scene view, and not your game view, your scene view, you'll see this drop down called Gizmos. And for just about every built-in component, and you can even have gizmos for your own stuff, and you can even set custom icons for them. We'll talk about that in a second. You can kind of turn whether or not you want to show the gizmo or not. So the gizmos range. So for the camera, you can see when I have it selected, it's the white bounding box for the perspective. I can turn that on and off. I can disable the icon, and this can be really helpful for finding things. For all of them, I can scale these in and out. This grid that you see, you can make that disappear if you want. Sometimes this becomes a bit of a nuisance, like when you're making 2D games and stuff like that, so it is helpful to just get rid of it. So gizmos, super useful. Now, you can also set custom icons for everything. So I have this cube here. When you select it in the inspector, okay, you can go over here and you see this cube, which you can click on it, and you can see you get all these sorts of things. Now, I can click any of these, and you can see now in the inspector, I just get a label where in the middle of the object. And I can set these to these shapes if I want, these diamonds or circles. It's pretty helpful to have it set like that. You can even set it to texture and image you have inside your project. I don't do that very often, but you can. This is very helpful for invisible objects. So, say this cube, wasn't being rendered, and I still wanted to see where it was in the scene, because where it was is important. Say it was a spawn point. This is something really helpful to have. Pop this back on. Okay, so gizmos and the F keys are both super helpful, and there's even more stuff we can do just inside the scene view here. Okay, so I have mentioned this 2D, 3D toggle here, and this is useful for so many things. If you're editing UI, it's really useful. Note the F key still works when I'm locked to this view. You can turn on and off the lighting. With this toggle, you can toggle on and off audio. This was only added recently, and it's basically the best thing ever. You can see there's a bunch of things you can toggle on and off there. Something that's really cool that was added in Unity reasonably recently was this shading mode drop down. So if I want to look at the wireframe and things like that, can be really useful. in the upcoming version of Unity, you're actually going to have a brand new outline, and I believe you're going to toggle between the current outline you see here and the new one in this menu. It might be I haven't downloaded the beta quite yet, but you'll see it. So this is really helpful when you're doing heavy 3D. Hopefully you know what a lot of these things mean. I'm not going to cover them in here, but you can see your different GI channels as well. Very handy. So the scene view is pretty snazzy. If I go ahead and hit play, I'm going to pop over into the game view. There are lots of things we can mess with in here. This scale button is something you can mess around with. So you can upscale your resolution inside the editor. So I've only got a 1080p monitor here. I could pretend like I'm at a absurdly high resolution if I want to make sure stuff still works, etc., etc. Probably the most useful things to pay attention to are this drop down here. This says 16 by 9. You can change the aspect ratio of the renderer. This is super helpful if you're testing UI. This is super helpful if you're testing your game, which I imagine most people will do at some point is test their game. You can set custom aspect ratios. If you set it to free aspect, you can resize it freely. Now, I actually think free aspect is a bit of a trap. It's a lot of people will leave it on there. You should always be in some sort of standard aspect ratio. So, like, just about everything these days is 16:10 or 16:9. You might still see 4:3 for full screen monitors, but free aspect is not really going to be an aspect ratio that you want. So you want to go ahead and set the aspect ratio. Now, if you want to set a specific resolution, you can do that. You see how it says standalone, and then it gives a resolution of 1024 by 768. You do that. Okay, and it renders it inside this window. You can make your own. I could make in a fixed resolution or an aspect ratio. So what if I wanted to have a, what is ultra wide? Isn't that 29? No, it's like 23.9. Crazy aspect ratio. I could be wrong on the aspect ratio there, but you can see like now it stretches it, and it just black bars. And in fact, if you want to learn some of the ways you can manipulate UI, I talked about this in the UI video a little bit. You can kind of see some of the ways you can manipulate your UI just by fiddling with the different aspect ratios. It's really handy. And of course you can combine it with scale no matter what. Another really handy button here is maximize on play. So say you're showing off to someone and you just want to get a big screen of the game, or you just want to play test it a little bit more. Without building it out, you can hit maximize on play here, and it will maximize. Another thing you can do, you can also maximize specific parts of the editor window. So you can see that I'm maximizing the inspector, the console, and you do that by hovering your mouse over the element and hitting Shift and Space. You can also hit this hamburger menu in each side, and you can hit maximize, and it does the same thing. Shift Space is generally what you want to do. Other than the game menu, it's really not all that helpful. You need to make sure that you're doing it inside part of the editor, not part of your game. Otherwise, the shortcut won't register. Can be super helpful. It's better kind of, if I want to do something like that, I'll usually pop out the game window and maybe move it to, I have a second monitor, I'd move it over there. But obviously that doesn't play as well on a video, but you get the idea. So maximize and play can be super helpful. You can make it so that gizmos are visible inside your game view. This helpful for debugging, but for the most part, when you want to look at that kind of stuff, you're going to pop over to the scene tab anyway. So I don't use that one too often. Excuse me. Okay, so next I want to talk about some really basic things you can do inside the inspector. So I'm going to open up the script and I'm going to make a game object bucket here. All this is going to be is I just want to have a list of game objects that I'm going to drag through the inspector. So I'm just going to put this. I'm not going to do anything with this script. I just want to show you guys. So if you make a list, and it can be any sort of iterable object. So this is an array. If you had a list, you could also use that. And if I drag this script, okay, you see that now in the inspector, you can, whoop, alright, I can, you can see I can set the size of this list, and this should be pretty familiar to you, and you can drag in specific things, and since I'm just dragging in game objects, I can drag in whatever, and you even see that the the object, talking's hard, the object I dragged in, the cube, which I had set its icon, you can see, look at that, it even shows up in there. That's super useful. So, but that's not really what I want to show here. So I'm going to set this to 0, okay? And instead, I want to add a new element to the list one at a time. And the easiest way to do this is, say my list is going to have this object, I just drag it from the scene, plop it right onto the top of the list, and you see it incremented the size by 1, and it linked it right in the inspector. Now, you can also then duplicate these array elements, you can delete them. Note that it's going to just clear it. Oh my gosh, I cannot remember the shortcut off the top of my head. You can actually just, boop. That's right, it should have gone. Alright, I guess when it's empty, and you click it again, it'll actually get rid of the entry from the array. So adding these things in like this, super useful. Now, a lot of people see this and then they try to like multi-select, and it doesn't work the best. And like when you're selecting multiple things, right, you can kind of see the messages I get in the inspector here. So what I really want to do, if I wanted to add in multiple things to the list at once, I can totally do that. And I need to lock the inspector to do that. And the button I'm looking for is up here, this lock button. Alright, now this won't change. The inspector won't change no matter what I select. You see as I select these things, it doesn't change. I undo it, and we're back to normal. Okay, so if I lock this, and now I multi-select, and I drag these in here, you see, it adds both of them to the array. Very useful. Very useful. I use this feature all the time. If you're linking stuff through the inspector, you want to make it as fast and efficient as possible. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself insane. So let's say you want to reuse a component, okay? So you've added this stuff here, and you want to put this over here. Well, if you wanted the same values, you'd have to drag and drop all the things again, and that'd be kind of annoying. What you can do is you can right-click a component, and you can go here to Copy Component, okay? And there's a lot of stuff in this when you right-click a component. You can see you can actually change the order of it, kind of useful. So if I right-click, I hit Copy Component, I can go to any game object, let's say, and then I can right-click anywhere on any component. You kind of want to right-click on the name. You see if I'm trying to right-click through here and it doesn't work, but if I right-click it, I can either paste the component as a new component, and you see it paste it in as a new component, or I could right-click a component of the same type, and you can see I can just paste in the values. So that's very, very handy. So again, that's right-click. After I can copy a component, and then I can paste the component as a new component, or I can right-click the component I already have and just copy in the values. Really, really useful. So, alright. You can also have multiple inspectors. Now, this I use quite often when I am dragging stuff in through lists as well. So the way you want to do this is you just left-click the hamburger button. You add tab, you can add another inspector tab, okay? And so if you have one locked, you can still have another inspector that changes. And that can be really handy if, say, your list, like the list I have here, is a game object array. If that was a specific type, I could then go look for those in the inspector and be on my merry way. So there are a couple of things hidden up in this menu, okay? So the Add tab has lots of stuff. There's that Maximize button, and you also have Lock. Now, the most interesting one that not a lot of people use, and that's for good reason, is Debug. Okay, so normally, let's say I'll put another variable in this script. I'm going to call it hello. I'll set it to 2f, okay? And I'm going to make a private variable called goodbye. Set to 1. Okay, and we can ignore this warning. You can see that my public field hello is quite visible, but I don't see the private field. Okay, so this debug thing, okay, this debug option, that's going to show it. It's going to show it right there. When you see it's grayed out, that means it's private. That means it's not going to be accessed in the inspector. So with debug, you can see it also shows up instance IDs, and these are things that are part of just about every component. I can't actually think of one that wouldn't have it. And you can change these. You're probably just going to leave them alone, but you can change these values and things like that. And it's just like normal at that point, right? If you are hit and play, and you undo it, it's going to go away. Now, something that I like, a lot of people will talk about, oh, what if I change all this stuff? Let's say I set my crazy value, and then I right-click. I can copy that component now, and when I unhit play, you can see I can paste the value. So a lot of people say, how do I keep my values that I edited while playing? Now, there actually are some assets that will sort of do it for you, but you don't always want to do that. Usually, you should only mess with one component at a time. And then you copy the values if you're happy with them, and you can just paste them right in. A lot of people like take a screenshot, and it's just messy. You can just copy the component and paste its values. Okay, so there are a couple cool things you can also do with the search features. So, and these will work inside both the project and the hierarchy. Some only in others, but you'll kind of get the idea. So normally, like, you can search in here, and if I want to find my directional light, I'd start typing directional light. But this only matches the name of the game object. So if my directional light was called what's up, which is a terrible name for a game object, but if it was, and I start typing directional light, see, it doesn't find it. But if I type in the name of one of the components on it, like the light, you see it does show up, and that's because it's searching for the components as well. There's a shortcut for that. You can do t:\light. Now, that would help you find stuff, like if you had a subclass of something, like if you had something subclassed. Not the most useful, but it does exist, and it can be helpful. Let me go ahead and save the scene real quick, and I'm just going to call this scene A. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate my cube a couple times. And I can hit Control D to duplicate this. And yeah, I'm just going to move these guys around. And sorry, just want to get a bit of a kind of a scene. All right, cubes. Great. I saved scene A. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete some of these cubes, and I'm going to save this as scene B. So this is a feature that was introduced, I believe, in Unity 5.3, but it's multi-scene editing. You can see I can drag in 2 scenes from my project view into the hierarchy at once, and I can quickly swap between them without having to unload and reload scenes. This is really helpful if you have scenes you need to edit at the same time. Maybe scenes have lots of duplicate objects between them. And the reason why you'd want to do this plays into the new scene management tools in terms of scripting for the most part, but it can be really useful. And you know how it does duplicate the lighting, and it renders both things at once. Now, these scenes kind of act like folders inside the hierarchy. And you can see you can unload a scene, and it keeps it in the hierarchy, but it doesn't have it like loaded in. And then you can load it, and there's lots of stuff you can do with this. Okay, very useful. I use it in a game I'm making that has lots and lots of levels in it. And it used to be I'd manage everything in prefabs, but when these new scene tools came out, it became a lot easier for me to manage multiple things at once by manipulating them in different scenes. So I'm going to go ahead, and you can then remove a scene, and it will just remove it from the hierarchy. It won't it won't delete the scene out of your project. So there we go. It might take a second, I guess, to refresh. I hadn't actually seen. You could see that the shader like kept them brown there for a second. That was kind of weird. So hold on. I'm gonna change up the tags on these real quick so that they're kind of unique. Let's see, what have I got? What color? It could be red. So you can be an orange diamond. No, you could be green. You could say purple. And you be yellow. Okay. Sorry, I'm just making so that you can see what I'm selecting. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and delete these duplicate purple cubes. Okay, so each of these has a different... I have 6 cubes in my hierarchy. Where did... They're the one's on top of another. Oh, somewhere. Wait, I just can't count. Oh, my goodness. Alright. Okay. So you can save your selection. Alright, so let's say... I control clicked, okay? Control clicking lets you multi-select, or you can shift click to select everything in between two, alright? And that selects everything. Alright, let's say somehow I get rid of that, okay? That, like, I clicked away, and, oh, I really, like, I spent some time doing that selection. How do I get it back? Well, you can't get it quite back immediately, but what you can do is you can save these, okay? Like, let's say these 3 cubes were super important. I can go up to Edit, Selection, and you can see I can hit Save the selection. Now, I was fiddling around in here before I started the video, so I already have a selection 1, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit Save Selection 1, and now if I click away, do some other things, and I want to select those cubes again, I can go ahead and hit Load Selection 1, and lo and behold, I have them back. So this is not a feature I use a ton. Ordinarily, I'll have like object folders where I have like an empty game object, and I group things like that. But sometimes it can be helpful to save selections. And the shortcuts for this are Control Alt and a number key. So if I hit Control, I just hit Control Alt 6, click away. Now I can hit Control Shift. What did I do? Is it not Control Alt? Sure is. Control Alt and 6. Control Alt 6. Bizarre. Okay. Oh, maybe my keyboard might not like that. Sorry, my keyboard does not like holding down some combinations of like Control and Alt and stuff. I'll hit Control Alt 3 for that. Control Shift 3. No. Strange. Well, you can see it. It saved it. Hopefully your keyboard doesn't block you from doing things like that. But like I said, this isn't the feature I use the most, but it is a cool one. I like knowing that it exists, if nothing else. So, yeah. Alright. So, I covered multi-scene editing, searching, and some of the stuff you can do through the inspector. The last thing I want to show you is just a component in the UI. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these, and I'm going to make myself a canvas, okay? And inside this canvas, I'm going to make an image. I'll anchor this image to the bottom left of my UI. Let me hop into the game tab so that we can see this. I'm going to duplicate this image. I'm going to anchor this one and position it in the top right. And I'll put this one in the bottom right. Okay, so, and this image, I'm going to give it a child. That's, let's say it's another image, and I'm going to actually find a sprite for this. Okay, and let me just give it some padding. Okay, so, no, a lot of people, like, say if they want to fade out something, they'll edit the alpha of the color and the image component, and that is one way to do it. But let's say that I wanted its child to fade with it. Now my script is going to have to manipulate the color of both of these at the same time. That's a bit of a drag. Now, there is a component called a canvas group. So if I type canvas group in here, I do believe I covered this in my UI video, but it's worth mentioning again. There is this canvas group component, and now it links together the alpha of these together. So you can have multiple canvas groups for like large complex hierarchies, and canvas groups are one of the best ways to manipulate things. So let's say this image was actually a button. Okay, now what are you doing there? Okay, you know, I can so this button normally it'll be white, and if I click it, you can see it's kind of changes color. Let's change this to something really easy to notice. Okay, there you go. So this canvas group lets me control a couple things, okay? I can make the whole hierarchy not interactable, and you can see now it changed to the disabled thing on side the button. That's actually like really helpful. So you can see change the disabled color there. And set it back to interactable. Blocking raycast. If it's set to not block raycast, it's not actually going to intercept my mouse clicks. Okay, so this means that if there's something underneath it and that catches raycast, that it will that component will detect the mouse click. Ignoring parent groups means if your child, say this, had a canvas group. Okay, so currently I've set this to not interactable. It doesn't block raycast. I'm going to toggle this off, but off. This had a canvas group, and then I hit ignore parent groups. Well, now this button doesn't use the alpha or anything from this, and I mean, at this point, there was no reason to have the canvas groups, but you can kind of see what this toggle does. So, okay, so there's a ton of stuff in the UI. Some of the stuff I didn't go over, there's a ton of stuff hidden away in these project settings. There are lots of physics settings, and this is stuff that I might do a deeper dive in another video. Stuff like the script execution order in particular is a huge feature that you should get familiar with. I didn't mention everything in the game one. I'll let you figure out what the stats menu does, but you can see, among other things, it tells you your frames per second. There is a ton of useful stuff hidden away in the UI just about everywhere. I couldn't even begin to cover it all. I just wanted to show you some of the tips and tricks that I think really help. And just some of them. Not by any means an exhaustive list. So, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And if you have any tricks of your own that you really like, let me know as well. I'm always looking for fancy schmancy new things to do inside the Unity editor. All right, thank you.